just want to leave. Please, can I just leave? You said it was just going to be for a couple of days.
We are talking about the movie Lost Gully Road, a movie that I keep wanting to call Fern Gully Road. But anyway, Lost Gully Road is directed and co-written by Donna McRae. And this is an Australian slow burn horror movie, and it focuses on this this young woman, and she is going to this kind of remote cabin in the woods, and she's played by Adele Perovic. And she is playing a character called Lucy, who is on the run from some guy. Now, we don't really know the details of that. It may be an ex-boyfriend, it could be some type of criminal activity, and but nonetheless, she's trying to get away from this mystery person, and she's kind of going into this sort of secluded cabin in the woods, as instructed by her sister. And she's told, you know, don't use Facebook, don't use your smartphone, etc. You need to keep off the grid, etc. Anyway, so she kind of goes to this remote cabin in the woods that is kind of let by this kind of like seemingly friendly old woman. And while she is there, she is kind of starts to experience strange phenomena, almost like there's someone watching her. Now, this could be something supernatural. It could be the person, obviously, that is after her. It could be another stalker. For example, we have this kind of seemingly pervy guy at the local convenience store who seems to take an interest. Or it might be that she's just going on a kind of a booze and drugs fueled paranoia, kind of going stir crazy with the cabin fever. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie to find out. So let's discuss. So this is a slow burn movie, very slow burn movie. It's not a particularly long film, but nonetheless, I do feel I should mention that, because this is going to be a kind of a real deciding factor whether you should watch this movie or not, because I don't think anyone who is not interested in slow burns would watch this, because this really is a slow burn film. But I've got to say, it does have a few things in the plus column here. First and foremost, the acting here is pretty good. I felt like the character of Lucy was a well portrayed and well acted performance. So, you know, and she's on screen quite often on her own a lot of the time, and I think she does a good job of portraying this kind of character that's kind of going a little bit kind of stir crazy. You know, she's coming from used to the kind of city life into this kind of like very rural area, not quite being able to kind of adapt to it, especially without the distractions of modern life. And I thought she did a good job of kind of doing that and just trying to find things, you know, to do. You know, going for kind of walks in the forest with a red coat on that'll evoke Little Red Riding Hood imagery. Getting drunk, doing naughty things with herself, all that sort of stuff. And I've got to say, I thought she does a good job of really portraying that that kind of loneliness to a certain degree. So that was pretty good. Also, this movie being kind of shot in the Australian outback somewhere, it really does look pretty, you know, pretty kind of like lush and beautiful at times. And you really do get the impression that this kind of cabin is really out in the middle of nowhere. Now, in reality, it just may be the way it's shot, but you know, it certainly looks like it literally just kind of backs onto loads and loads of kind of greenery, and it looks like it really is in the middle of nowhere, which I thought was very, very, you know, beautiful to look at. Also, this, as I've mentioned, is a very slow burn film, but at the end of the movie, there is an attack, and I think because this movie has been relatively kind of nothing much happens within that kind of really the first hour, to be honest with you. But we do have this attack at the end. It seems particularly violent. But it's also, I mean, it's not just the fact that you've had this relative serenity up until this point. The movie, it really does kind of like show you that this, you know, what ends up is what actually happens to, and what is actually the malevolent kind of like presence here really is a kind of a violent force. And the attacks, I feel, do come across like that in a way maybe that we haven't seen before, very, very much in kind of horror cinema. I think it's done very well. A mixture of kind of like the audio effects, the camera trickery, kind of speeding up stuff like that, and still obviously the performance. All this creates a kind of a very violent and kind of quite shocking, without going in any explicit ways, kind of attack scene. I thought it was very, very well done. Maybe what doesn't work so well here. To me, this movie is maybe a little bit too slow and kind of, it borders on boring at times, because ultimately there isn't a lot of plot here, and the vast majority of the screen time here is the character of Lucy really just kind of finding things to do, and we have a little bit of kind of like, you know, is there something watching or someone watching her, and maybe there's become a little bit of spookiness and stuff like that, but not much. I also have to say that I thought this movie suffers from some real conveniences. So, for example, how we as an audience find out about what's happening is, without kind of giving it away, it's just a kind of a piece of evidence that just seems to be left out for us to find as an audience member. It makes no sense really in the context of the story about why it would be there. It's just for us as an audience member to find out kind of what's actually kind of happened. And also the whole idea of the kind of this woman not being able to go on kind of any type of kind of social media or anything like that, or use her phone at all because this unnamed person might find her, just seems a little far-fetched. I mean, what is this guy? These are the CIA? I mean, again, it's just an excuse to have the character of Lucy be isolated and take away the kind of the possibility of a mobile phone, really, you know. So that kind of, I wasn't quite buying it, to be honest, and I felt like we needed a little bit more in regards to that in the whole reason why she's running away is left deliberately ambiguous. But to me, I think you needed a little bit more, because you can't buy into the character's plight, because you don't really know what's happened. We just have to accept we're kind of coming into this kind of, it feels like halfway through. So we don't have that kind of that sympathy built up with a character at this point, because we don't know the full story. So, you know, there was that. Overall, though, I think this is a good character study. This movie really seems to be about if anything, more than it's just about the kind of being isolated and kind of what that will do to a person, and kind of like suggesting that it kind of may, that in itself may be kind of damaging, and how we are social animals, etc. So it is somewhat of a kind of a character study, which I do think it does a good job of doing that. And like I've said, when we do have the reveal and the inevitable conclusion, it's particularly kind of done in a way which I feel is pretty strong. But the movie is a little bit too slow for its own good. And like I said, I do think there's a little bit of plot conveniences here as well. So I'll give this one a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.